It sounds impossible, even unthinkable. But right now in 2025, there are states across America where serious movements are pushing to leave the United States. That's not a conspiracy theory. It's in legislative sessions, political campaigns, and even mainstream headlines. According to a 2025 Newsweek poll, 1 in 5 Americans say they want their state to secede from the U.S., with some hoping to join Canada, form a new nation, or go fully independent. The unity that once held the country together? It's cracking. So today, we're counting down 10 U.S. states where the idea of breaking away from the Union is no longer a fantasy. Get ready, some of the names will shock you. Before we move on, hit the like button to boost this video in the algorithm and support our work. Number 10, Vermont. It may be small, but Vermont's independence movement is anything but quiet. Home to the Second Vermont Republic, a group calling for peaceful secession since 2003, the state has long flirted with the idea of going solo. The reasoning? Vermonters pride themselves on being different, culturally, politically, and economically. Many here see Washington as bloated, distant, and disconnected from Vermont's values. The group's motto, a peaceful democratic revolution to end the American empire. Though the movement hasn't made it into the legislature, public opinion has been shifting. A 2023 survey by Castleton University showed 13% of Vermonters support some form of independence. That might seem low until you remember that's over 80,000 people in a tiny state. If a future national crisis hits, financial, political, or environmental, don't be surprised if Vermont is among the first to seriously revisit its independent roots. Number 9, Colorado. Colorado might not be the first state that comes to mind when you think of secession, but peel back the surface and you'll find a rural rebellion that's been quietly building for over a decade. In 2025, several counties in northeastern Colorado reignited efforts to break away and form a new state, citing deep frustration with what they view as unchecked progressive dominance from Denver. This isn't some fringe idea that appeared out of nowhere. Back in 2013, 11 counties voted on a secession initiative, and while most of those efforts failed at the ballot box, the sentiment behind them never disappeared. Since then, the cultural and political divide between rural Eastern Plains communities and liberal urban centers like Boulder, Denver, and Fort Collins has only intensified, fueled by everything from gun control laws to energy regulation to COVID-era mandates. By 2024, the governing publication reported new organizing efforts to revive the concept of 51st state status, with some leaders even exploring the possibility of joining Wyoming. Petitions, town halls, and rural caucuses have picked up steam, especially after the passage of state legislation that critics argue ignores the agricultural and energy concerns of eastern Colorado. The idea may not have full legislative backing, but it's no longer just idle talk. Local sheriffs, commissioners, and state house candidates are campaigning openly on promises of separation. If polarization continues to rise across the nation, and if national crises continue to pit rural priorities against urban policy, Colorado's secession push could shift from symbolic protest to real political pressure. And the next time counties vote on leaving, the results may be much closer. Number 8, New Hampshire. Live free or die isn't just a motto in New Hampshire, it's a declaration of intent. In 2025, that spirit took a dramatic turn when a group of Republican lawmakers introduced a constitutional amendment to allow voters to decide on secession from the United States. That's not satire. That's a real bill submitted to the State House. This push for independence didn't appear overnight. In both 2022 and 2023, similar proposals made their way into committee discussions, and each year they've gained more traction. The driving force? A deep-rooted belief that Washington, D.C. has become too bloated, too reckless with spending, and too invasive in state affairs. Many Granite Staters argue that the federal government no longer serves their interests, and that independence is the only path to true self-determination. According to a 2024 Concord Monitor investigation, support for secession is more widespread than many realize. In one Republican-heavy district, nearly 14% of voters expressed support for breaking away from the Union outright. The movement is led by the New Hampshire Independence PACs and has drawn endorsements from sitting lawmakers who argue that secession is no longer fringe. It's a legitimate safeguard against federal collapse. New Hampshire's population may be small, but its independent identity runs deep, from its resistance to income tax to its long-standing tradition of limited government. If one state were to challenge the Constitution and seek an exit from the U.S., it might just be the one that has been openly daring Washington to cross the line for over 2 centuries. Number 7. Hawaii. For many Hawaiians, the idea of independence isn't just a fantasy. It's a deeply rooted historical cause. Long before Hawaii became the 50th U.S. state in 1959, it was a sovereign kingdom, and that legacy still burns in the hearts of many native Hawaiians. Now in 2025, calls for Hawaiian sovereignty are louder and more organized than they've been in decades. The driving force: land rights, military occupation, and cultural preservation. The U.S. military controls nearly 5% of Hawaii's total land, and in places like the Pohakuloa training area on the Big Island, local residents have clashed with federal authorities over environmental damage and sacred sites. In 2024, a series of protests drew national attention and sparked renewed calls for the U.S. to withdraw. Several groups like the Hawaiian Kingdom Government and the Office of Hawaiian Affairs continue to push for varying degrees of autonomy. While full-blown secession is still a long shot, a 2025 AP report highlighted that over 20% of native Hawaiians polled support greater self-governance or full independence. If national tensions rise or federal authority continues to clash with local rights, Hawaii's call for self-rule might one day evolve from symbolic protests to a serious political movement. After all, for many here, statehood was never the destination. It was the interruption. Number 6. Alaska. When it comes to going it alone, no state has a bigger claim to independence than Alaska. The sheer geography, resource base, and frontier mentality make it unique. And in 2025, the idea of Alaskan secession is very much alive. The Alaska Independence Party, once considered a fringe group, is back in the headlines this year after formally petitioning for a new referendum on secession, according to Newsweek. And while the state's Supreme Court has historically ruled against such votes, the political pressure is intensifying. Why now? Alaska's conservative population feels increasingly alienated by federal environmental regulations and energy policies. Oil production, mining, and logging, the lifeblood of the Alaskan economy, have all been heavily restricted by decisions made thousands of miles away in Washington, D.C. The state also receives less federal infrastructure funding per capita than many believe it deserves, fueling resentment. A 2025 poll cited in Newsweek found that 27% of Alaskans support exploring independence. That may not be a majority, but it's a significant block, and one that continues to grow. If the national government stumbles further into crisis, Alaska could be among the first to demand an exit and reclaim its rugged identity as a self-reliant northern nation. Before we reveal the next state, be sure to subscribe. Your support lets us keep exploring the untold stories and sharing content that truly matters. The more of you who join, the deeper we can dig. Come along for the journey. Number 5. Oregon. Oregon's secession conversation isn't about the whole state leaving. It's about splitting it in half. In 2025, the Greater Idaho movement has exploded, with rural eastern Oregon counties actively campaigning to leave Oregon and join the state of Idaho. And this isn't just talk, it's on the ballot. As of 2025, 12 counties in eastern Oregon have voted in favor of moving forward with the plan, according to AP News. The reasons are clear. Residents in the east feel politically alienated by the ultra-progressive policies coming out of Portland and Salem. Gun laws, taxes, and environmental mandates are just a few of the flashpoints. Organizers argue they'd be better off governed by Idaho's more conservative legislature. In fact, the group pushing the change claims 2/3 of voters in those counties support the switch. Although legal hurdles remain, including approval from both state legislatures and Congress, the cultural split between eastern and western Oregon has never been wider. If a serious constitutional showdown emerges in the coming years, the Greater Idaho movement might set the stage. It's not full state secession, but it's a radical shift that could open the door to much bigger fragmentation across America. Number 4. Illinois. Think Illinois is too deep in the Midwest to face secession threats? Think again. In 2025, downstate counties, those outside of Chicago's orbit, are ramping up efforts to separate from Cook County and form their own autonomous region, according to AP News. The political contrast couldn't be sharper. While Chicago dominates state politics with its progressive policies, much of rural Illinois leans heavily conservative. Issues like gun rights, abortion access, and taxes have become fault lines. Many rural voters say they're effectively ruled by a city that doesn't represent their way of life. Back in 2019, 27 counties passed resolutions supporting a non-binding measure to explore forming a separate state. Fast forward to 2025, and new legislation is circulating in the State House that would trigger further study and lay groundwork for separation. Meanwhile, support is growing online and in town halls, with local sheriffs, county boards, and Republican lawmakers backing the cause. If the federal system continues to fray, Illinois could easily become a flashpoint, not because it wants to leave the Union, but because half of it might want to leave Chicago behind. And that internal secession could spark ripple effects far beyond the Midwest. Number 3. Florida. Florida has always done things differently, and in 2025, talk of independence is heating up again. While it doesn't have an official secessionist party, the idea of Free Florida has grown in right-wing circles and libertarian forums, especially as tensions with the federal government escalate. Governor Ron DeSantis has made headlines in recent years for defying federal mandates, suing Washington over immigration enforcement, and challenging the CDC during the pandemic. In 2024, he even hinted that Florida has the resources and population to stand on its own. That offhand remark sparked a tidal wave of speculation. Supporters argue that Florida's booming economy, now ranked the 4th largest in the U.S., gives it the economic independence to chart its own path. With thriving tourism, agriculture, and trade routes via major ports, the argument goes, who needs D.C.? A recent governing article even pointed to increasing chatter about post-federalism, the idea that some states may begin behaving like independent actors even without formal secession. While still on the political fringe, the idea of a breakaway Florida is no longer a joke. It's now a conversation. And in a state known for bold moves and brash politics, that conversation could someday turn into a movement. Number 2. Texas. No state flirts with secession quite like Texas. In 2025, the Texas nationalist movement has gained more traction than ever, winning seats in the State House and pushing hard for a statewide referendum on independence. According to the Houston Chronicle, pro-secession candidates picked up 7 new legislative seats in 2024, and a bill proposing the Texas Independence Referendum Act has already been introduced. Supporters say it's about restoring Texas sovereignty, pointing to immigration battles, gun control, and federal spending as examples of Washington's overreach. Texas, after all, was once its own nation, the Republic of Texas, and that history looms large in today's political rhetoric. With an economy bigger than Russia's and a population approaching 30 million, many Texans feel they have both the means and the mandate to govern themselves. While courts and Congress would almost certainly block any real breakaway attempt, the political energy is impossible to ignore. Texas isn't just talking about independence, it's actively campaigning for it. And the next few election cycles could push that dream closer to the ballot box. Number 1. California. California, the economic powerhouse of America, is once again at the center of the national secession conversation. In 2025, Governor Gavin Newsom shocked political observers when he said in an interview that California must be prepared for all scenarios in response to escalating federal gridlock. That comment, widely interpreted as a quiet nod to the Cal-Exit movement, reignited debate overnight. The Cal-Exit movement, led by Yes California, has been around since 2016, but is now gaining traction amid a surge in West Coast disillusionment with federal leadership. According to Politico, over 33% of California voters under 35 say they would support holding an independence referendum. Add to that the state's GDP, ranked 5th largest in the world if it were a country, and suddenly the idea doesn't seem so far-fetched. From climate change policies and immigration laws to healthcare and gun control, California has frequently found itself at odds with federal directives. And with rising frustration over Supreme Court rulings and federal budget crises, more and more Californians, especially in urban hubs like San Francisco and Los Angeles, are questioning the long-term value of staying in the Union. It's still unlikely, and constitutional hurdles remain enormous. But California has the wealth, population, infrastructure, and political capital to make serious noise. And in 2025, it's not just making noise, it's building momentum. Secession was once the stuff of Civil War textbooks and political satire. But in 2025, it's a living conversation, unfolding in town halls, legislatures, and political rallies across the nation. From California's Cal-Exit movement to Texas's independence drive, from rural rebellions in Oregon and Illinois to sovereignty debates in Hawaii and Alaska, the United States is facing a new era of fragmentation. Whether symbolic or serious, These movements reflect a deep, growing mistrust in federal institutions and a longing for local control. If the U.S. economy stumbles, if the national debt crisis deepens, or if political polarization pushes past its breaking point, these conversations could turn into real demands. And the idea of a United States? That could become more myth than reality. If this video opened your eyes, hit subscribe to stay ahead of the next seismic shift, and drop a comment. Which state do you think would be the first to actually walk away? Thanks for watching, and stay alert. America's map might not look the same in 10 years.